10 lies the fake media still wants you to believe, coming up next on Deceptions of the Ages News. Hello everybody, welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. Today we're going to be talking about 10 lies that mainstream fake media still wants you to believe, and your politicians as well. And this is getting people like Sidney Powell and Donald Trump in trouble, which I made a brief video about that, which you can probably see up here, or go ahead and look at the video list of the Trump videos. All right then. Let's talk about 10 things that fake media still wants you to believe. White people are responsible for slavery. Now, in the media, there has always been this myth that white people are somehow responsible for the slavery of African Americans. That is not true. Slavery, if you knew anything about history, which unfortunately most people don't, slavery has been practiced throughout every culture in the world, throughout all of known history. So it is nothing new. It's always been practiced. And the African slavery, or the African slave trade in the North American and Caribbean were practiced because the natives, that these large-scale state-sponsored planters that were planting sugar, or mining, which is labor intensive, needed cheap labor. So the first thing they tried was the natives. The natives would not succumb to slavery, so they were told by Arab slave traders that there was a market in Africa for slaves, because the Arabs had been practicing slavery for some time and practiced slavery until the 1970s. Now, the idea of slavery, which means you just don't pay anybody and they're not allowed to leave their work site, has been stretched and stretched until it is, by definition, practiced in Asia, in Malaysia, and in most countries in those regions in one form or another. And it's done through low wages. Now, the idea of slavery is never going to go away, and it is actually increasing because of the fact that there is a constant demand for a cheaper labor market, and they keep pushing wages down as they move these factories, which were what the original slave centrally located ports on the African coast were called. They were called factories. The idea that slavery was practiced solely by white people is a myth perpetuated by the media, again, for political and monetary and strife-creating purposes. The only people that profit from slavery are the very wealthy. That's always been the case. That will always be the case. And slaves will always compete with and be able to outstrip any private enterprise. So along with the horror of slavery, there is also the economic side of it. And that is one of the reasons they fought a war in the 1860s. All right, so let's go to number 9. All right, number 9 is a favorite of all of you U.S. history students. The Maine. Yes, who blew up the Maine? Remember the Maine? Remember all those slogans they had back in the early part or the late part of the 1800s? Well, the fact of the matter is, although the Maine did actually blow up, there was never any evidence that it was done by some Spanish agent provocateur or the Spanish itself to instigate a war or to send a message to the American people. The fact of the matter is that ship blew up for some unknown reason, and all we have is the cause and effect to look at the fact that it allowed the Americans to, that me being an American also, to seize what was left of the Spanish Empire, and it also allowed the newspaper that perpetuated the whole thing, William Randolph Hearst's newspaper empire to really prosper and to really excel and take over the entire newspaper world. So who did it? We don't know, but pretty sure it wasn't the Spanish. Now let's go on to number 8. Number 8 is another favorite of history students from junior high to high schools in the United States and has been for some time. All right, it is the myth that the Lusitania, we all remember the Lusitania, the cruise ship that was sunk in 1917 and led the United States into war, was sunk out of just Han, German, horrible, bloodthirsty, merciless, whatever. The fact of the matter is that that's not the case at all. The Lusitania was sunk after repeated warnings from the Germans to stop importing munitions in these cruise ships. So there were numerous warnings about it, and the fact that the Lusitania sunk immediately when it was hit, there was no time to rescue any survivors, meant that it was full of munitions, and also dives onto the wreck show that it has actually blown out. It was actually blown out by a huge explosion, which people would say, oh, that's from the coal on the ship, but probably munitions. So that's another mystery that I think that they have locked it down, the dives, and so we really won't know the full answer to that. But anyway, Lusitania, number 8. Let's go to number 7. All right, the Pearl Harbor attack. Did Franklin Delano Roosevelt know anything about it? This is a favorite amongst conspiracy history and World War II buffs. And so we'll talk about this not in too much detail, but there is so much evidence that he did know about it, and more comes forward every day that it's pretty much conclusive that Franklin Roosevelt did know about the attack, but the mainstream media still wants to lie about it and say, oh, somehow these Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor just out of the blue and we didn't know it was coming. Well, if you're into conspiracies like this and you really want to know why the world is the way it is, take a brief look at this message. Hi, are you into UFO conspiracies, government conspiracies, or any kind of conspiracies? Well, you're going to need some kind of a background on how all these conspiracies got started. You're going to need to go to HEINESSIGHT. Go to HEINESSIGHT.com and check out Deceptions of the Ages News, Mormons, Freemasons, and Extraterrestrials. It's available on Amazon, Kobo, iTunes, and wherever your favorite books are sold. Check it out. 6. The Korean War started as a result of a North Korean invasion. That is not true. The Korean War started as a result of continual incursions under the direction of the Central Intelligence Agency by the South Koreans into North Korea. North Korea finally got sick and tired of it, and they saw what was happening, and they had enough, and they invaded and pushed the South Koreans all the way back to Busan. That was 1950 for you history buffs. 5 takes us to 1991 and Saddam Hussein and the First Gulf War. Now, the fact of the matter is that at 1991, Saddam Hussein was our enemy. In 1990 and before that, and I could be a little bit off with my date. We could have to go back to 1989, and we will go back to 1989 because in 1989, Saddam was our friend. And in the 80s, Saddam was securing massive loans guaranteed by the United States Department of Agriculture for pesticides, for tractor parts, etc., etc., that we know all went to nerve agents, etc., and military equipment, all secured by the United States Department of Agriculture loans. So Saddam was our friend. Now, what happened with Saddam? Well, the fact of the matter is simple. Saddam fought a war with Iran on our behalf. And when it was over, Saddam was broke and they had borrowed massive amounts of money from Kuwait. And Kuwait said, you know, Saddam, we need our money back. And Saddam said, okay, well, we'll sell oil and pay you back. Well, they couldn't do that because while they wanted their money back, Kuwait drilled laterally across the border into Iraq's oil fields, and that triggered the invasion. And just as a final note, hours before the invasion, Saddam asked the CIA what would happen if I attack. And the answer was nothing. They didn't answer. So that was our lie about Saddam Hussein. If you're interested in the Middle East, go ahead and take a listen to this brief message. Hello. Have you ever wanted to quit your job, fly to Arabia, live on the beach, teach a bunch of nice college kids English, and spend your weekends snorkeling and camping? Have you ever wanted to have a beautiful Indian girlfriend? Well, now you can. And the good news is you don't need to quit your job or get a passport to do it. Just get yourself a copy of My Year in Oman, an American experience in Arabia during the War on Terror. Now, I'll leave the links in the description. Number 3, John Kennedy was elected president in 1960. Well, just like every other mainstream media lie, John Kennedy was not elected president in 1960. The fact of the matter is Richard Nixon won that election, and it was only because of the Democratic and Mafia machines in Illinois and Dallas where votes were produced that outnumbered the number of voters in certain precincts, especially Cook County, Illinois. So, John Kennedy did not win that election. That perpetuated another lie that is just a sub-lie that the media still perpetuates to this day, and that is that Lee Harvey Oswald killed John Kennedy. We all know that didn't happen, and yet the media still perpetuates that lie. All right, let's go on to number 2. Muslim extremists attacked us on 9/11. Well, the fact of the matter is, Muslim extremists did not attack us on 9/11, and most investigations, or not one investigation except for the United States government investigation, ever came up with any kind of conclusion that doesn't say that that was probably an inside job. Nothing explained how Tower 7 suddenly just demolished itself, and within hours of the attack, etc., etc. So that 9/11 was not really perpetuated by Arab terrorists, and subsequently led us to wars in Afghanistan that are still going on, and Iraq that destroyed that country and killed millions of people. Still, the media says that Arab extremists attacked us on 9/11. Number 1, Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. Well, here's another media lie that if things continue on as they are, that will come out within a few months and years into how much election fraud, etc., took place during this election. Now, that has happened in the past, but because of how people are the way they are now and willing to perpetuate a lie and with no concern for the truth whatsoever, what will probably happen in the mainstream media is that they will perpetuate this lie that this person who is nearly dead somehow won the presidency over somebody who probably won by the biggest landslide in United States history. And so this is the number 1 lie that has been perpetuated on the American people and on the people of the world. And this is the biggest threat to American democracy and individual freedom since Adolf Hitler took power in 1936. All right then, So this is Deceptions of the Ages News. I've got a brief message here, and if you have any comments, go ahead and leave them in the description. And I'd like you to go ahead and think about a purchase of one of these fine products. Hi, do you want to support President Trump? Do you want to defend the United States and our democracy? Well, it's easy to do. Just go ahead and go to redbubble.com and go to HEINESSIGHT. On the HEINESSIGHT store, you'll be able to purchase, and only on Redbubble will you be able to purchase these wonderful designs about President Trump, about the DC March, and other great designs coming up. So go ahead and check it out. Support democracy, support President Trump, and support America. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.